Thank you, Richard, board members, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me here in order to give you an idea about structural fund and how it works and how, from our perspective, innovation and research is seen and what are for us the critical and decisive elements. And in that respect, there are basically two main concerns we have to address. Firstly, Europe is, and I think this is a more general comment, which is valid for in general, is Europe is excellent in turning money into knowledge, but lacking in turning knowledge into money. So meaning translating knowledge into business cases, I would say, is one of the big deficiencies of Europe, and here we have to see with all our means and the policies how we can overcome the situation. But the second concern is already more related to our policy, and I don't know if you are so aware about the situation, but as we are always talking about a Eurozone and a non-Eurozone, I would say Europe is also divided into a research zone and a non-research zone. If you look at the map of Europe, you can rather easily identify the research zone and the non-research zone, and to a certain extent the Eurozone and the non-Eurozone covers more or less the same area, but maybe the research zone is even smaller. So this is something we have to address, and here structural funds came in. Because these two facts I have just sketched out have an important impact on the economic growth potential, the well-being of people, and the level, finally, of science all over Europe. On particular challenge is this brain drain, and here in particular in Eastern and Southern European countries. If you take as an example Latvia and Lithuania, they have lost 10% of their workforce in the last 10 years since their accession to the European Union. 2 million people emigrated from Romania, and one can imagine that those people are not the most unskilled ones. We see similar trends and worrisome figures in Bulgaria or the Western Balkan countries, and especially youth immigration is causing the Balkan brain drain. As an example, some figures, already 12,000 people between 25 and 35 years leave Serbia every year. 10,000 leave Bosnia, and 9,000 leave Croatia annually. So you can imagine this counts for 15 to 20% of a year's age in that member states, and these are the best ones, and it's rather likely that nearly none of them returns back, maybe for holidays, but not for work in their home country. And this is something we have to change. And I can tell you, as a former CEO and board member of an innovation-driven company, and as a former national minister for science, I'm convinced that these challenges can only be tackled by innovation. In this regard, it's also no coincidence that innovation and education are key targets of the Europe 2020 strategy. We can be proud of our achievements in Europe, and we can be proud of the world's largest internal market, which is without any doubt our economic engine. But to reap the full potential of the internal market, Europe needs to close its innovation divide. In this regard, a European research program or Horizon 2020 program is crucial, but may I say, not enough. Also in terms of money, if you compare, Horizon 2020 allocates 80 billion euro, which is a significant increase compared to the previous period, and may I say, right so. But regional policy will allocate at least 100 billion for innovation research, strengthening the competitiveness of the economy. The difference is Horizon 2020 is driven by the excellence criterion, and this is also correct, and there are no doubts it has to be also in the future. Horizon 2020 does not have a geographical criterion to spread innovation. That's why it is so important to have a geographical instrument like regional policy. And here we have just finished the biggest legislative reform of regional policy since its introduction in the 70s. And this reform focuses on the stimulation of the economy. What are the main objectives of the funds? The main objective of the funds are not just to help poor regions to catch up, but to help all the 274 regions in Europe to implement European objectives like the European 2020 strategy. It's important to stress that the traditional task of regional policy was, and certainly is, also in the present and future, to help poor regions to catch up. But more and more important is to have a financial instrument at hand to improve the economic situation of Europe, its competitiveness, and also to have something, a financial instrument, to follow up the European political objectives currently laid down in the Europe 2020 growth agenda. So we have, for the moment, a clear focus on research and innovation, on SME, renewable energy production, and energy efficiency. And we have set minimum shares for these areas in the less developed, better developed, and transitional regions. But I also want to emphasize that we define innovation in the broad sense of the term according to OECD, not in the narrow technological sense. So if a company, for instance, introduces a new marketing concept, a new PR concept, which improves its competitiveness, it's also something we accept as something which is innovative and improves the competitiveness of a given company. In this regard, we especially focus on strengthening the cooperation between universities, businesses, and government, like it's the case in so-called clusters in innovative regions, like here in Belgium or in the Netherlands, where I have been just last week. However, experience shows that spending money alone is not automatically leading to innovation. Unfortunately, quite the opposite. That's why we want every region to adopt a smart specialization strategy, which gives a clear picture of its strengths and weaknesses. And believe me, I have visited over the past 4 years many regions, also, and if you like, especially remote ones. Each of them has its potentials as assets. It's only sometimes necessary to identify it, to see what it is. But often it's exactly the remoteness which can be turned into an advantage, if you like, a unique selling proposition. And this is what we are working on. I have to say, of course, for some regions this is nothing new, and for others it's still a particular challenge. And the guiding principle how to use the funds is projects follows strategy. This is, may I say you, I would say the biggest cultural shift for many is that we are not now talking or working on the implementation of individual projects, but all these projects have to be embedded in a strategy, be it a smart specialization strategy, be it a transport strategy, being an energy strategy, but there has to be a strategy and not only an idea and a feeling how the money could be spent. But before I end, I want to draw your attention to the fact we aim to make better use, and I think this is something which is of a particular interest from yours, about the synergies between Horizon 2020 and regional policy funds. This is not always an easy task, in particular because of the different intervention logics and different accountability constraints, but I think it's a necessary one and should be promoted by all players involved. To conclude, we know from surveys that 80% of people want to live, work and get old in the region that they have born in. And if we are capable of strengthening the innovation capacities of regions, I think we can provide a great perspective for our children and grandchildren. We have the money, we have the tools and instruments for innovation. What finally need is, I have to say, the entrepreneurial spirit and the people that implement innovative projects. Thank you for your interest, and I'm keen to take some questions or to discuss with you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Please have a seat. First, let me just take a question from online. Marilyn.
Yeah. The microphone. I've got a question from Friuli region in Italy. Are there any pitfalls that the Commission or the regions should avoid in deploying structural funds for innovation?
I mean, to avoid a pitfall, we ask them to come forward with a strategy. And it's not a bureaucratic demand from us, but it is something which helps some regions to have a much clearer picture about the opportunities, their potentials, and it's often more than a provision for the use of our funds. It's often an opportunity to have a much better idea about the future of a given region.
But Commissioner, if I can jump in to supplement that, then how is a region supposed to develop a strategy like this? Many of the regions aren't going to have the background to do it.
Yeah, we have offered and provided experts which are available. We work together with the Joint Research Center in Sevilla, and I think now around 150 regions are already member of this smart specialization platform. I mean, I'm not focused on the term itself. I think it's more important to see the content. If this content is achieved by another term, I'm flexible, but decisive is that member states, regions have a clear idea in which areas they try to concentrate their financial investments.
Questions? Questions from here? Would anyone like to? Yes, Tula.
I can maybe repeat what we a little bit already talked at the lunch, is that when you have so many different kinds of regions and different kinds of possibilities or innovative capacities of these regions, so how will you evaluate, what is a good strategy? How do you know that for Finland, the strategy is excellent or it's better or worse than Sweden's, for instance?
I have to say this is
for instance,
this is certainly something which is also a challenge for our people, because it's for the first time to negotiate and to agree on substance. But we have developed together with our member states and experts from the different areas, I would say, from my point of view, nearly a never-ending list of indicators. But of course, we have to assess all the proposals from the member states and regions individually. But in principle, we have to apply the same standards. Of course, part of our policy, of our philosophy is, as I have said, to catch up, but not only in economic terms, but also in capacity terms, in knowledge terms. And here we have to guide some more than others. We have to assist some more than others, but the demand, the requests are the same.
Okay, another?
Yeah, the thing I was going to add, when I heard the question, I thought the question the opposite way around, which is, how do we ensure we're successful with that application? And in our experience, we do quite a lot of things, but in our experience, it's probably three things. One is having a critical mass of capability, expertise, whatever the core competency is, that you don't have half a person, you have a critical mass of that expertise. Secondly, that there's some notion of, I'll call it public-private partnership, but some sort of partnership between government, between industry, and between the university. Because if you get those three working well together, then you can do great things. And then finally, to make sure that there's an individual that's a mentor or a coach who's done that before or has experience in that area that can help whoever this individual is or this company is or this organization is to succeed. In our experience, if you do those three things, your probability of being more successful is higher? That's how I thought about that question.
Yeah, once again, I think we have changed significantly the policy, and this means also a cultural shift, and it's a learning process for everybody, not only for the regions and the member states, but also for us, as I said. But what we can already see is that, for instance, within the Commission, the level or the readiness to coordinate, to work together between the different DGs has significantly increased. So it's no longer this silo mentality we can often see, because if the Commission wants to negotiate with member states on substance, it's only DG Regio would not have this knowledge, this know-how, which has to be provided by the individual DGs being in charge of the different areas. And also the necessity to attract external experts is another positive outcome of this process, and the same applies for member states. So I think at the end it will be not easy. We will certainly have, like always in life, very different results, but I think it's important to start this experiment, if you like, open-minded, and for the moment I would say this is certainly the case, and I'm rather confident that in a few years already you can see the consequences of this new policy in the way that many regions, some member states, which are now facing economic difficulties, will definitely improve their performance.
Okay. Yes, David, and then Maya. And then we'll come to you.
Yeah, the Commission has ambitious energy goals, and there aren't very many sources of energy. In simple terms, it's windy or it's sunny or whatever. Do you see the use of structural funds being predominantly related to a region's natural geography and advantages, the hills or sun or wind or whatever it is? Or do you see other potential uses of structural funds to support the Union's energy and climate goals?
I mean, not only because it's written in the Lisbon Treaty, this principle of subsidiarity, but our understanding is always that member states, regions have certainly a better knowledge about the situation on the spot. What is our line or guideline is, of course, the main objectives, and then member states, regions have to respond according to their opportunities, their current situation. And of course, when it comes to renewable energy, one has to take into account geographical and topographical conditions. For instance, there is not everywhere the same strength of wind around Europe. The same applies for water, for sun, and all these things. So certainly this has to be taken into account. But one should see, I personally believe that in the area of energy efficiency, there's much more potential. And this is something we address in particular in the urban area, where there are a lot of savings possible. And here in particular, Horizon 2020 can play a decisive role to improve the situation, and this can be accompanied by the structural funds to finance one or the other pilot project, which hopefully might trigger a lot of private investments. I think this is also something which has to be understood. The fact that we have this multi-annual financial framework is something unique in the world, that such an entity like the European Union is able to agree about a 7 years budget. Basically it's 10 years, because there are additional 3 years time to complete projects. So for private investors, I think it's extremely important, and I think it's great that someone, the European Union, in its member states, is able to offer in certain areas, and the rules of games are clear, public, possibilities of investments. And this should certainly trigger a lot of additional private investments, and therefore I was so keen that we have a quick agreement and adoption of our regulations and the budget in order to avoid the private sector to come in.
Okay, thank you. Maya.
Actually, just building up on that, in terms of measurable impact, what do you see is the role, if any, of large industrial players in this context?
Well, I think they can contribute, first of all, with their research capacities, because if you look in a member state or in each country, I mean, the number of companies which are really doing research work is a very limited one. And these are usually big companies which have the financial means, and only a few of them are, for instance, active in what I would call basic research. Yeah. So this is something exceptionally, and I'm grateful for each company which is willing to offer some money to basic research where clearly it's not quite clear what is the outcome.
You speak as the former science minister in Austria. Yes, okay.
That's true.
But now you have a new job now.
But I will never deny what I have done before, so this is a principle of mine. So I think big companies can contribute, and that's why I have stressed this migration issue, because I think here there is also special responsibilities of big companies, multinational companies, to take care that there is, if possible, an equal distribution of qualification around Europe, because it's the baseline for the economic perspective, for the welfare of a given region. And this is later on, again, I would say a precondition for good profits in the regions. So if big companies contribute to the improvement of a given region, it's a positive thing for themselves later on.
Thank you. Let's take a question or two from the audience. And Commissioner, I believe that you have to leave shortly, correct? Yeah, you'll let us know, okay?
Depends on the question.
But we, of course, will continue with this discussion.
Quality before speed.
Yeah.
Means leaving, yeah.
Make it a good question then. Yes, please, go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
I appreciate it.
Sure. I just want to jump on the fact that you're talking about the private sector. My name is Ana Coelho. I work for the government of Catalonia and the Catalan Agency for Competitiveness. I have a question regarding supporting SMEs and their innovative capacity through the structural funds, because still now structural funds, according to our experience, structural funds are not very much suited to help innovation capacity of SMEs. Thank you.
Look, this has to be defined individually, and I think what you address is more this golden plating or red tape in many cases, and here one has to say, without leaving it to the member states, but the requirements from the European level are much lower than it is finally the case, but this is also due to the fact that member states and regions are accountable to us. So that's why they introduce one or the other layer, but not all of them are necessary. So this is clearly a huge interest from us to reduce this red tape by introducing, for instance, more flat rates, lump sums, whatsoever, in order to allow smaller companies also to participate in our programs, because, as I said, innovation is not something only for the big ones, it's for everybody. And we have to improve the innovation capacity of all our companies in order to improve our overall performance.
Okay, I believe there's a question online. Is that correct? Yeah.
So actually, there are a lot of questions on the synergies between the structural funds and Horizon 2020. And an additional aspect is the fact that the Commission published a regional innovation indicator. And could you define in simple terms what are the criteria that make a region innovative Is it R&D investment? Is it existing infrastructures, future projects?
There are certainly, and we can provide the audience and all the online participants with a list of indicators related to this assessment. But finally, if it comes to the assessment of the individual regions, we will certainly take parts or some of these indicators to appraise a given region and to agree about certain figures, because it's an aim of mine, and I know it's not an easy exercise to be also in terms of the program as simple as possible and not to be too complex and too complicated. But of course there is always an attempt or a temptation to introduce too many indicators and conditions. But there's a long list, and we can provide the audience with this kind of...
Another question from the hall? Yes. Microphone on its way. Please identify yourself.
Hello. Hello. My name is Antonio Cunha. I'm rector of University of Minho in Portugal. And my question is about the link between structural funds and Horizon 2020, of course, that you highlighted as a very important point. The mechanisms that will be used to promote this coupling, do you think they have to be regional specific, or there will be a kind of a general mechanisms that will be induced by the European Commission in order to promote this link that I think is essential to achieve the goals of the next European framework?
I mean, there will be some areas where really a close cooperation and the joint use of funds might be possible. But to make a long story short, I think that at least my main objective is to offer by structural funds an opportunity to improve the attractiveness of universities, of research facilities, by offering the necessary state-of-the-art equipment, infrastructure, etc., to offer attractive salaries, so that we create, if you like, a scientific environment which might attract outstanding researchers and scientists to a university. And here we can, and this would be the baseline to be competent enough and in terms of research capacities and so on to approve, for instance, for ERC grants, etc. So what we can do is to provide the necessary surrounding in terms of hard and software in order to improve the overall performance of, for instance, a university to compete in a more global competition.
Commissioner, could I ask you a question that we've been thinking about as a board, and we're working on a study on this question. Why the whole premise of innovation in the cohesion funds, why would we care about where an innovation comes from? I mean, if the markets for technology are global, from the point of view of the European economy, why even worry about a regional dimension if you're talking about research and innovation? And I don't know whether some of the other board members would like to jump in on that as well, but it is something we've been talking about. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think it's a conditio sine qua non, if you like, to attract a region, to keep people there and to attract other peoples to come there. So innovation is a core element of the attractiveness of a region. And in that respect, we have to try to do everything. And that's why I have mentioned this still existing division between research areas and non-research areas in Europe. And this is related to more innovative regions and less innovative regions. So if we would like to catch up, we have to catch everywhere and in any discipline. And the core element of this process is certainly to be innovative and to be attractive enough to attract innovative people. First of all, I think it's important to understand that in principle we have to apply everywhere the same standards and requirements. So we cannot say, well, this is a less developed country or region, so we are less tough and the other ones are more advanced. So, but I think the biggest challenge for everybody more than ever, due to the budgetary constraints we are facing everywhere in companies, in governments, is to make choices. So we are not talking that each region should have all the same areas of technologies and so on. And also at universities, it will be more and more important to choose some areas where you are much more advanced than maybe in the others where you meet the teaching requirements. And this is certainly for everybody, everywhere, the biggest challenge, because if you have to make choices, you have to hurt one or the other, and this is not fine for those who are in the lead, because sometimes they have to be re-elected, sometimes to be reappointed or whatsoever. But it's unavoidable. We have to make choices, but choices accompanied by more cooperation and coordination, and that's what's Europe about. And we can offer this, and Horizon 2020 also already the framework programs. You could only apply if you offered a project where you had participants from, I think, at least 3 member states or 2 member states. So it was already necessary, and it will be even more important and relevant in the future. So choices on the spot, but embedded into an improved setting of coordination.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Very much we will be following the development of the new policy very closely.
Me too.
Yeah.
Wherever I am.
Thank you very much.